Greetings, everyone, and welcome. Tonight, I have a very special update. I'm going to be focusing on what I'm calling the Kremlin connection. Of course, when we think about the Kremlin and we think about Vladimir Putin and the propaganda that rages out of Russia, we do everything that we can do to fight against that and to stand for truth and to support Ukraine. But as the war has unfolded in Israel with Hamas and now Hezbollah, things are beginning to become very, very clear for us to see. Over the past few weeks, I've been digging into what I will call the Kremlin connection. Another way that I may refer to it is the Russian global connection. And I am 100% convinced, after over 30 years of working in Russia, 26 years in Ukraine, and working throughout the globe, that there is an absolute connection between Russia and, of course, Ukraine and that horrible war. Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Israel, the United States, the EU, NATO. I could continue to list even other regions such as Africa, that continent where Russia works so tirelessly to destabilize it on a daily basis. The bottom line is this: I'm here to tell you tonight and validate it with proof that there is a connection between the Kremlin and what is happening in the Middle East, specifically with Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria, and Iran, further showing that there is a divide. There is a separation between the West, Europe, the United States, and values that we hold dear to our hearts, and the work of the East to bring destruction, to bring separation, to bring division, to bring terrorism, to bring hatred. And tonight, hopefully, I will be able to make that very clear for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, turning the bell on, sharing it with others. Tonight, this video, very, very special. And I trust and believe that when it is done in just a few moments from now, you will have better understanding as to how Russia, and the Kremlin specifically, is working in ways that we do not even understand or recognize before now. Let's take a peek. If you look at the world, just in your mind, in your head, this is what we see. We see Russia. If you, on that map, take a look at the two black lines. I have this corridor drawn, and in that corridor, you see some red circles there. In those red circles, of course, you see Moscow, and that is Russia. To the left of that, you have Minsk and Belarus. And even to the left of that, under the black line, is actually the Russian territory of Kaliningrad, that oblast there on the sea, their seaport there. Coming down below that, you enter Ukraine. And this is why I am a firm believer that the war in Ukraine is not only about Ukraine. It is about geopolitical things that are happening globally. So just look between the two black lines. You see Russia, you see Belarus, you see the war in Ukraine, then continue down kind of at a southeast direction, and you see Iran. You see the territories that I will be talking about in just a moment, Dagestan. You move into Syria, the blue circle there representing Israel, the war that is happening down there. Between those two black lines, there is so much activity going on that I am confident nobody in the world even understands or recognizes how interconnected it is. On the left of the black line, you see Europe, referred to as the West, fighting for and standing for what is right. Not every European nation. There are some holdouts, but in general, Europe standing for what is right. To the left of that, of course, the United States. You see that coalition. And then, of course, we have the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. To the right of the black line in the upper right-hand corner, I have placed the flag of China. Why? Because China is absolutely connected with Russia. It is just reported over the last 48 hours that China and Russia will be expanding their geopolitical ties for a better future for both nations. Guys, the handwriting is on the wall, and between the two black lines there on the map, we are seeing the battle line. That is where the battle line is drawn, and it's not just in Ukraine. Although The war in Ukraine is horrible, and we are doing our very best to support it. But my friends, it is much bigger than Ukraine. There is a massive work underway to destabilize this world and to divide this world. I could then go in and begin to speak about elections, whether it's in Europe or the United States or other places, but I will not do that on this video. I want to stay grounded and connected, trying to prove and validate to you tonight the Kremlin connection. Let's start with this right here. Where is the proof? When I begin to say that there is a Kremlin connection between what is happening, of course, in Ukraine, but then moving down into the Middle East with Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran and Syria, where is the proof? The deeper into southern Lebanon, the Israeli Defense Force units advance, and we know over the past few days they've had a limited ground incursion, and we have seen it. You have seen it. If you're here tonight and watching this, you are witnessing what is happening in Israel, in Lebanon, and I'm sure you're trying to figure it out to the best of your ability, and that's why we're here to learn together. But here is what we do know. The deeper into southern Lebanon that the Israeli Defense Forces push, the more interesting things that they are finding in Hezbollah's hideouts, those tunnels, those bunkers, those storage units underground. And most of this interesting stuff that they are finding is, Russian made and also in very large quantities. Among some of the things that are being seized, this picture right here to the right are 9M 131 FM anti-tank Metis systems. These are used in ground warfare as anti-tank units. They are being found in these bunkers and in these supply units of Hezbollah in mass amounts. Let's look at a little more proof tonight. Two other things that are being found in very high supply in these Hezbollah bunkers. The 9K32M Strela two-man portable air defense system and two variants of RPGs, the RPG-29 Vampire and the RPG-27. My dear friends, these are all Russian arms. The Volga infantry grenade launchers, the RPG-27, RPG-29, were discovered in the last few days in ample supply in the Hezbollah layers and bunkers and the tunnels that are being unearthed as Israel is pushing into southern Lebanon. Where is the proof? How about this? Take a look at this map. Over on the right, you see I highlighted specifically for you 4 regions. Number 1, I want you to look at the top of the map in the dead center, the purple. That actually is Crimea. I am putting that on the map colored only for one reason, to show you why Russia is trying to hold on to Crimea, why they are fighting in Ukraine. They want this direct land path coming straight down from Moscow all the way down through the Middle East. It is logical. There, highlighted in the red, is the nation of Russia itself. And from there, you come into the Caucasus region and Azerbaijan, Armenia, Dagestan, these other places that we will be talking about in just a moment. To the right, Iran, much larger in area than most people realize, highlighted in the green. And to the left, Syria, highlighted in the orange. What could have happened? How could these Russian-made weapons find their way into Hezbollah's bunkers? Well, one way to look at it is this. Russian-made weapons could have found their way into Hezbollah's arsenals through third-party countries such as Syria. Now, folks, for sure, Russian-made weapons have entered the Hezbollah arsenal through Syria. I will show you a graphic on that in just a moment as to why that can happen. But do not stop there. Most likely, that is not the only source per information from security services of Israel and the United States. Yes, Mossad and the CIA. There are also other third-party nations that are supplying Russian-made weapons to Hezbollah and to Hamas and to factions in Syria and Iran. There is an exchange happening right now on a very high level between Iran and Russia. If you look due north of Iran, they're colored in the green, you see a sea. That is the Caspian Sea. And my friends, that is the main shipping lane between Iran and Russia. The ships run nonstop with supplies. And there is no third party nation, there is no United Nations, there is no uh, foreign nation that is giving oversight. These ships are running freely back and forth between Iran and Russia. And my friends, they go every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These supplies are coming from the Kremlin. Now, of course, the Kremlin is also receiving supplies from Iran to assault Ukraine every day, whether it is drones, missiles, or other infrastructure and supplies being sent through from Iran into Russia. This is happening nonstop. It's not a one-way pathway. There is an exchange. We then could go further, talk about the exchange of finance. We could talk about the exchange of technology, specifically nuclear technology. There is so much in play. And when we begin to listen to Israel talking about striking Iranian nuclear targets, and then the United States saying, hang on a second now. Now you can strike Iran, but be careful about the nuclear sites. Guys, can't you see how interconnected and worried these nations are that the striking of targets may cause an escalation, not only in Ukraine and Russia, but specifically in the Middle East, which then would move into more of a regional slash global war. Remember the black lines on the map that I had early in this presentation. Where is the proof? To the right is a map of Syria. If we go back here, you see Syria in the orange. You come here, this is Syria, blown up for you so you can see a little bit better. And you can see the colors there, the red and the blue and the white. Why? You may or may not know this, but inside Syria itself, Russia currently has 105 military sites. 20 of those are full military bases, and 85 of those are military, what they call military sublocations, scattered throughout Syria with all the white dots you see there on that map. Those are Russian military installations. So is it logical that Russian supply and Russian weapons are flowing into Lebanon and flowing into Hezbollah and moving through the Caspian Sea and through these mountainous regions and coming to Iran and Iran coming back to Russia? We're witnessing it. We're watching it, but we need to call it out. We need to evaluate it. We need to see it. Russia is doing its very best not to only wipe Ukraine off the map, but the Kremlin connection is this. They want to destabilize the entire world. And the way they can do that is by supplying weapons to Hezbollah, supplying weapons to terrorist organizations, and continuing to destabilize not only that region, but also destabilize the world. The other interesting thing there on that map, around the blue, to the left of the blue, my friends, that is actually the nation of Lebanon. So we're talking about direct access to Hezbollah and to those Iranian proxies that are raging and waging war against Israel. And now Israel is returning the favor. Where's the proof? How about this? Recently, it was discovered that Hezbollah uses Soviet-made, and yes, these are old, these are ancient, these are most likely not that effective, but Hezbollah using proven Soviet era Tupolev 143 Rice reconnaissance drones. Now, here is where we see another connection with Syria. Of course, if you see Syria, you see Russia. The only country in the region, at least officially on the books, that used or uses the Rice 143 system, drone system, early Soviet system, was Syria. You go back to the map of Syria, it becomes blatantly obvious that Syria is being used equally as a transport hub for Russian weapons to get to these terrorist organizations. Where is the proof? On the bottom of this image here, on the left, you see the nation of Russia represented by the map and its colors. On the right, I have the cutout of the nation of Iran. Between that, two arrows, one pointing to the right, one pointing to the left, and in between those arrows are the flag and the logos of Hezbollah and Hamas. Now, what will we say about that? Where is the proof? It is no secret that Russia has traditionally adopted the strategy of supporting terrorist groups and dictatorships from the days of the USSR in an attempt to oppose itself not only to the West, but also to civilized countries in general. This is a common tactic that dates out of the Soviet playbook that is still being used perfectly by Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin as he wages war not only in Ukraine, but against the civilized world. It was just a few days ago that we heard Vladimir Putin say, and I translated it and played it on the live stream, that Russia was fighting against the terrorists and the Nazis in Ukraine. Folks, there are no terrorists in Ukraine. Ukrainians are not neo-Nazis. The terrorists are in the Kremlin. The terrorists are in Moscow. And as we look historically at this, even pre the war in Ukraine, this is a play right out of the Soviet playbook. Fund the terrorist, equip the terrorist, invade the terrorist ideology. Let them think that they're pushing their ideology, but let's push the Kremlin's narrative and the Kremlin's ideology. Foreign intelligence agencies, including Mossad and the CIA, are very well aware that terrorist groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah are being armed not only at the expense of Iran, which is blatantly obvious, but also an underestimated supply is coming from Russia. You know, as we analyze the war in Ukraine and we talk about it and we do our daily analysis, and there are a lot of YouTubers that talk about how much supply, this many tanks, this many shells, this many whatever. It's important to do that. Please do not misunderstand me. But I'm telling you right now, there is a flow of Russian weapons that have been stockpiled for decades that are flowing around this world in order to bring destabilization, to bring conflict, to bring a further divide between the East and the West, to push the Russian-Chinese coalition of economics into a deeper tie. You can drag India along with that. They're sitting on the fence figuring out how they're going to play the game. You can bring North Korea in that. And I know you may say, oh, well, North Korea, they're just this poor little nation over there. They're just a leftover from the Soviet era, and they've got their own issues. They may, and they do. But I will tell you this. They're sitting on decades and decades of stockpiling of old Soviet weapons. The argument then comes, Greg, they're just Soviet weapons. They're old. They're junk. 50% misfire. Only 50% actually work. Think about that for a moment. If you have zero and the nation of North Korea provides and supplies you with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, your argument cannot be, well, they're old. Only 50% work. It is a mass quantity of arms that are flowing through this axis of evil. And it is not only affecting the war in Ukraine, the amount of munitions and artillery that Russia rains down on civilians, on hospitals, on schools. But not only there in Ukraine, folks, we're beginning to see now even much more clear. The Kremlin connection pushing down into the Middle East with Hezbollah and Hamas, Syria, Iran, and others. We cannot ignore it. Where is the proof? Over on the right here, I have an image of a guy. The guy is doing his best impersonation of an ostrich, sticking his head in the sand. To the right, I have the nations of Russia and Iran. For years and even decades, the main intelligence agencies globally have turned a blind eye to the obvious facts of Russian and Iranian sponsorship and provision of global terrorism, including the provisioning of weapons, equipment, and military specialists. Think about the destabilization that is happening in Africa right now. It's Russia, my friends. It's private military groups. It's the remnants of the Wagner paramilitary organization. Yes, the one that was led by Prigozhin. They are wreaking havoc and bringing terror to very poor nations, promising them one thing and taking everything from them. This is what is happening, has been happening, and will continue to happen if the world continues to stick its head in the sand. This cannot be ignored. You cannot tonight be sitting, maybe you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, or you're in the Scottish Highlands, or you're up in the mountains of the Italian Alps, the Swiss Alps, on the outback of Australia. And you're saying, well, Greg, I see all that happening over there, but that's not really going to affect me. My dear friends, it will affect you, and it will affect you very quickly. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm sharing truth with you. It was just this week that the ports here in the United States had a work stoppage. And folks, if you're not from the United States, you may or may not know this, but toilet paper disappeared in a New York minute. Sam's Club, empty. Costco, empty. Walmart, empty. Gone. And it was just a minor interruption. My dear friends, with the amount of destabilization that is taking place, and now, thank God the world is beginning to recognize it a little bit. Do you really believe that the Kremlin and Tehran and Beijing, they're just going to stop? Do you think that Rocket Boy in Pyongyang is just going to say, oh, okay, everybody's figuring it out now. Let's just take life back to normal? My dear friends, there is a new normal. And the new normal is we have no idea what tomorrow holds, but we do have the responsibility to be aware of it, to learn from it, and to do our best to fight against it. You may say, well, I'm just a farmer out in Nebraska. What can I do? You can contact your local official. You can write letters. You can support what is good and what is right to the best of your ability. That is how we overcome it. We cannot be people that stick our head in the sand. Where is the proof? Folks, this one is crazy. This one's crazy. Russia is historically proven to have had a hand in the formation of ISIS and the Taliban. Now, tonight on this video, I will not talk about those roots of ISIS and the Taliban and the formation of those groups where Russia 100% had a hand in it. But we can talk a little bit of detail. Russians were the second largest ethnic group in ISIS. You say, hold on. I thought that was like Middle East and, Islam. Really? Russians were the second largest ethnic group in ISIS. They were doing it under the guise of being supportive of that work through the nation of and the region of Dagestan. Dagestan was the main transportation hub for Russians who joined ISIS, mostly operating in Syria. On the right there, you can see the map. I've given the graphic for you. I have Iran there. I have Syria. I have the arrow coming out of Dagestan. Up to the left of Dagestan, you have Ukraine, where the war is raging. And due north of that, you have Moscow. Once again, my dear friends, draw the imaginary lines in your mind. straight down from Moscow through Ukraine, down through the Black Sea, down through Turkey, and then into the Middle East, where we are witnessing this. I don't know if I want to call it a coalition, but we're definitely witnessing this aligning to fight against the West and this axis of evil that is growing and showing itself much more clearly every day. Russian ISIS fighters, this is a fact, leaving Dagestan for Syria, took out medical insurance from the Dagestan Fund for Compulsory Medical Insurance. The initials of that is FOMI. Now, here's what's interesting. The FOMI, or that medical fund, is completely funded and bankrolled and supported through Moscow, through the Kremlin, with the oversight of the FSB. Maybe tonight you have never heard of that connection. Folks, I'm telling you the truth. There is a Kremlin connection that is working not only in the war that is raging against Ukraine, but also throughout the globe. We could go even further with election tampering. I haven't even said one time the word propaganda. This is happening right in front of our eyes, and it is high time that we begin to recognize. Mainstream media is not going to do it, so it's time that we begin to recognize the connection. Russian security agencies sent thousands. This is happening really about 2005, but 2010 it really kicked up for about a decade, and even until today, 2024. Russian security agencies sent thousands of fighters on business trips to the Middle East, who, as a part of ISIS, solved for Moscow-specific tasks those things that could not be solved at that time and even now by PMCs or private military corporations, for example, like Wagner. They were not sufficiently formalized to handle that level of the Kremlin connection and Kremlin control. That is why in the decade beginning in 2010, a foreign legion of Russians was formed in ISIS. Guys, just Google it. These are facts. An entire combat wing of Russians. But here is where people miss it. They think, oh, well, they were just there. That was their ideology, and they were fighting for ISIS, and it was just a Russian-speaking and Russian ethnic group that came together to be a legion there in ISIS. No, that is not why. They were put there and placed there, funding ISIS, supplying ISIS, and they were not focused on the idea of spreading ISIS ideology. But most importantly, they were placed there inside to spread the ideology of the Kremlin and Moscow. My friends, think about it. Throughout the world, it's happening. This is just the Kremlin connection, Hezbollah and Hamas and ISIS and Iran. My friends, if you're here tonight and you've made it this far in the video, you know that this propaganda and this narrative and this Kremlin connection is trying to push itself everywhere throughout the world to bring further division and bring destruction of anything that is good. So tonight, I encourage you, be aware. Do not be like that person that sticks their head in the sand. Be aware, share it with others, tell others, and support and stand for the truth, because 100% there is a Kremlin connection happening. Once again, thank you for this special update. I want to say special thank you for our moderators, for our subscribers. If you're here and you're new, consider subscribing, turning on the notification bell. We do the best we can to support Ukraine and also support the truth and share it with the world. Thank you for leaving a comment, and thank you for supporting. And I think most importantly, thank you for the moderators. You guys make it possible for me to just focus on pushing out the content and sharing and comfortably doing that. You guys are the best. Thank you for being here tonight. More to come. In fact, I think Professor Gertis and I will be doing a joint co-op on this, talking about this very video and other things he also has been digging in. So make sure that you pay attention for that. You guys have a blessed evening, and we'll talk to you soon.